We finally get to start putting the pieces together with these pass rusher prospects. I'm back from Indy. The prospects are on the field. You get to hear from them on today's show.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Brian Gutekunst said something that I think is crucially important as we start this discussion about pass rushers in this draft. And he talked about the things that they're learning in interviews. And he was asked, how much can an interview help a player? And what he reminded everyone of is no one is playing football. The Packers know what the tape says. The board is more or less set. And the only thing that is really going to change between now and draft day are medicals and any new personality off the field things that they didn't know about before. Because you can watch the tape and see, oh, that guy's going to be a freaky athlete. Scouts are also going and talking. Like if Bruce Feldman can put out the freaks list and know, okay, these guys in training are doing XYZ. You don't think the teams know? You don't think the teams know what every prospect ran in the 40 as a sophomore or how much weight they're putting up? They know. The Packers know who's going to have the high relative athletic scores and next-gen athleticism scores. They know already. And, there's going to be some variation in there, but they pretty much know. What Gutekunst reminded us of is testing really well is at best a confirmation. And so what he said was, it helps you feel like you have your evaluation right. Someone looks athletic on tape, they test athletic, you have confirmed. You can have confidence in your evaluation. What is problematic is you see someone play well on tape, they don't test well. Well, that lessens your degree of confidence. It's not inherently bad that they tested poorly. It's that, well, they look like they tested, or they should test well, that they are good athletes, and now they're not. And you go, okay, so are the things that I think they do well translatable? I'd have more confidence in that being true if the testing confirmed what I see on tape. That's when you can be most confident in your evaluation. Remember, at best, these are like 60% certainty bets. At best, maybe 65. And after the first round, you're probably nothing over 50-50 outside the top 50 players. So this is all about confidence intervals. And so you might say, okay, we don't love the tape, but they're athletic. I don't know that if you can go back and say the Packers picked guys like that. I mean, I know that that's the knock is they didn't pick good football players. But no, guys like Lucas Van Ness, you saw the flashes of a guy who is insanely built and shows insane flashes, but inconsistent. It wasn't a surprise when Rashawn Gary tested the way that he did. It wasn't a surprise when Quay Walker or Christian Watson tested the way that they did. It's on tape. It's the football playing part that sometimes, they have some issues with. So I want to go through some of these players. We got initial testing for the edge guys and the defensive tackles, and the big problem was a lot of these guys just didn't test. So you don't have good information on them, at least for now. Coming out of the combine, you would have liked to have more information. So based on the Dane Brugler top 100, which I think is a very good indication of what the league thinks, among edge guys, Abdul Carter is hurt. He didn't test. Tulane's Mike Green. Excuse me. I keep saying Tulane. Marshall's Mike Green. I don't know why I keep doing that. I really don't. He has some issues in his past that he is denying, some sexual assault allegations that he had to account for at the combine. Didn't test. Smaller player. Michael Williams from Georgia didn't test. JTT from Ohio State didn't test. Nick Scorton didn't test. So that's a big group of edge guys that didn't test. Now, the good news for the Packers is there is a quality set of players here. A quality set of players for the Packers to potentially get. A nice group of guys who checked the boxes. So of the guys that did test, Jalen Walker didn't test, but he's too small and is not going to fall to 23 anyway. Jack Sawyer, really small arms, T-Rex arms. Josiah Stewart, same kind of deal. 6'1" with 31-inch arms. That's just not going to be a Packer. Now there was, and then Kyle Kennard, he had a decent day, but at 6'4", 254, that's on the smaller side for Green Bay, though I think 250 is probably right. 6'4", 250 is probably big enough. But if you're only going to be 6'4", 250, you got to run faster than 4'7". The Packers want premium athletes in the top 100. And unfortunately, based on what he's done for now, he's not that. So they didn't rule a lot of guys out. Now, on the defensive line, we again, a number of players did not test. Mason Graham didn't test. Kenneth Grant didn't test. We're going to hear from Kenneth Grant coming up. Walter Nolan didn't test. Tyleik Williams didn't test. And then a couple guys that the Packers, you might have thought would be in range for the Packers based on whether it's the way they look. Shamar Turner, too small. Omar Norman Lott, who I had in the mock draft Monday because he was listed at 315 at Tennessee, is only 292. That would be the smallest defensive tackle the Packers have used a top 100 pick on in 20 plus years. Jarrell Worthy is the only defensive tackle under 300 pounds to be drafted in the top 100 by either Brian Gutekunst or Ted Thompson. And Jarrell Worthy was 298. Now, I know that may not seem like a lot, that 6-pound difference, but like 290 versus 298, that is a big difference. So that's not the best. And then Jordan Phillips, Alfred Collins, Deion Walker, Joshua Farmer just didn't test in the range where they seem like clean Packers fits. That doesn't mean the Packers would never take them. But this is like, if we could draw it up, you'd want these guys to be in these certain ranges. Only two defensive tackles checked all the boxes. Only two. And it's one of the reasons why I think right now, the odds-on favorite to be the Packers pick at 23 is Oregon defensive tackle Derek Harmon. He had an outstanding workout. He was extremely productive at the University of Oregon. His pass rush win rate, it doesn't matter who is charting it. He was an elite winner as a pass rusher, productive player, checks the size boxes, tested like an elite athlete. I think the only question is he going to be there at 23? And then Darius Alexander from Toledo, an older prospect, but a productive one, big enough, and tested really well. I want to talk about these pass rushers, though, and we're going to hear from some of these guys. We'll do that next on Locked On Packers. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets. If your first $5 bet wins, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. This edge class is really exciting. And it makes me wonder. I came into this weekend going, I don't think there's going to be enough edge guys who check the boxes for the Packers. That's why I think they're going to take a tackle. And now I wonder if there are so many guys that it is even more likely that they take a tackle, but they could still get a very good player on day two in a way that maybe I didn't think before. Right now, the cleanest of the clean, Shamar Stewart, and I know what you're going to say, he doesn't have any production. He knows that you're thinking that, and he has answers. He was asked about it. I was there.
I say I wasn't a sack chasing warrior. I just wanted to become the best player for my team. And sometimes the stats don't show that.
Is that something you think you can work on? Like you led the team in pressures, depending on who's charting. Like you still affected the quarterback a lot. Is there like a next step in your game that you feel like can get you to be a high sack player?
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely trying to get more composed when I get around the quarterback. Trying to run through the tackle instead of maybe trying to reach out, lunging for the tackle. I'll say sometimes the stats don't tell the whole story. It's all about the film. And when you look at the film, you can really see what was going on for the most part. But I'll say production is a little bit overrated.
Are you going to be the kind of guy that, like, if you, regardless of where you go, you're going to remember the names of the guys picked ahead of you?
Oh yeah, of course. I'm gonna give who. If you don't pick me, just know I'm bringing hell to your city.
Now, Nick Scorton, who is his running mate at A&M, also mentioned this is what was asked of them. Part of it is scheme. And so he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. Watch him play football. I'm begging you to watch. I think anyone that was like, I don't want Shamar Stewart, just didn't watch him play football. He's an extremely disruptive, hard-playing, crazy athlete. Right now, as of this recording, he is the most athletic by relative athletic score defensive end since in this century. So he's not going to make it to 23. He's just not. That's okay. Because Donovan Ezerokwu from Boston College, now a little short, 6'2" and change, high 240s. I would say the size is borderline. He's basically the same size as Clay Matthews. The only guy in either group, as of this recording, we're still getting some of the data, but the only guy to run a sub-7 3-cone. This is something that the Packers, like Rashawn Gary ran a sub-7 3-cone at 270. They believe in this with the pass rusher part of this. He is someone who Jeff Hafley and Vince Ogbazi, the Packers defensive line coach, assistant defensive line coach, recruited, coached. So maybe you don't change your model for him, but he tested well. The production is there. If he's there at 23, could the Packers be interested? He thinks so.
I actually I spoke to them over the phone, before this not too long ago, and it'll just be like a reunion from high school. Honestly, getting from recruited from high school to college, and obviously, like those, I was with them for 3 years, so it wouldn't be weird at all. Wouldn't be a surprise at all. I had a lot of respect for those guys, and I know that they're it's always open communication. That's a bond and a connection that we built for life, not just for my time in college. So
they need a pass rusher. You think they're interested in
I think so.
Now, some other players who check the boxes. Landon Jackson from Arkansas, who is the subject of some very lame ridicule earlier in the offseason when he was doing the bag drill and looked kind of awkward doing it. He was the winner on Thursday. 40-plus inch vertical jump. He is extremely athletic in a linear way, not going to dip and bend the edge. Not incredibly dynamic, moving inside out, but straight line linear pass rusher, but tested really well and size-wise makes sense. Jordan Birch is a name we've talked about from Oregon. Checks the size boxes, extremely athletic, did everything you want. He is going to be in range here. And then Olufemi Oladejo from UCLA is someone who is creeping into the narrative consciousness. He is someone who I think is creeping. I think the athletic board has him as sort of a round 3 kind of player. Mel Kiper has said, I think he should be a round 1 kind of player. A lot of Mel Kiper's boardedness and his analysis is tinged with what he's hearing from teams in the NFL. Oladejo is someone that I have mentioned as a Packers type player who could play the outside linebacker. He's a linebacker for a lot of his career at UCLA. Can play Sam linebacker in base and then be a pass rusher for you in sub package because he's got that kind of movement ability. Someone that I really like here. And then some of the guys who didn't test. Michael Williams, I think if he tests well, if he tests the way that he's capable of testing, will not be in range for Green Bay. JT Tuamoloa. I screwed it up, but that's why I call him JTT. Over the course of this process, I will get it right, I promise. And Nick Scordon, I think all of those guys have a chance to test sufficiently impressively for the Packers to be in on them. So, other names I didn't mention, guys who are borderline in terms of the testing. James Pierce Jr. Now, there's some attitude concerns there, but productive player. Ashton Gelati from Louisville. Is he a tackle? Is he an end? Tested pretty well. And then Princely Umamielen from Ole Miss. Came in a little light. 244 was listed. I believe low 260s at Ole Miss. Is not that. Now, if he shows up at his pro day, and does drills at 255, he's 6'4", explosive athlete. I would have ran the 3-cone better than he did. I don't think these guys are training for the 3-cone. It really seems like they're just not training for it. It's very bizarre. I don't understand it. They're getting bad advice because this matters to teams. I think they would. This is where you worry about that kind of stuff because he's supposed to be an explosive, bend the edge kind of guy. You want those guys to be able to then counter inside with speed. If he doesn't have that flexibility and that change of direction, that does make you wonder a little bit here. So that's potentially not the cleanest fit. This is a group I like. Now, the defensive tackle group, as I mentioned, is smaller, but I want us to get to know some of the guys that didn't test. I was able to talk to some of them and be there in Indy for their interviews. So let's do that. Let's talk to some of them because the Packers are taking a tackle in this draft. That's happening. So, let's get to know some of them next on Locked On Packers. The whole schedule on Tuesday or Wednesday got thrown off. We were supposed to have a bunch of defensive tackles come through. I was really looking forward to talking to Derek Harmon. And then there were all these delays. Only like 8 guys ended up talking. And I actually very much regret there was a player who came out late. I was exhausted from standing around waiting for these guys all day. Like, you're on your feet the whole day. And it is interesting that, you know, I'm always trying to look around like, okay, who is that? It's hard to recognize everyone by face. You're used to seeing them with their helmets on. CJ West from Indiana came out and actually listened to some of his interview. I just didn't record it for you guys. And he goes out and he tests really, really well at 316, runs 495, jumps 33. He's a little on the shorter side at 6'1", 316, but I think could play the nose for the Packers. I think could play 3-tech for the Packers. As of the moment, 916 relative athletic score, probably a day 3 type player, but just a name I wanted to flag here. Now, Kenneth Grant. We were told he was going to blow up the testing. What can happen here is some of these guys who are a little bit, who are either hyped players or I would say it's usually going to happen to more middle range players. This happened to Romeo Doubs, who I thought was a no doubt day 2 kind of player. He didn't work out until late in the process, and that dropped him to day 3. I don't think that's going to happen to Kenneth Grant, but I do think some of these guys, Kenneth Grant, it turned out has a little bit of a hamstring issue. He's 330 pounds. You don't want to push that. But guys like Walter Nolan, transfer, went through a number of high schools. I think there were some questions about his maturity, about, and that's for the interviews to answer. But you want to put on a show then. You're a guy who, that athletic ability is part of the deal. Go do it. But they got a chance to talk to him. He undersized, I guess, but it is the kind of player who I think would have done really well in the testing. Well, for now, there's no testing. So what are you getting? What are you getting in Walter Nolan? Well, here's what he says.
I feel like I do everything. Like I said, it's kind of hard to find somebody that look like me and do the things I do. That's how it is. I feel like I get off the ball better than a lot of people. I feel like just my versatility. Like a lot of people probably gonna get to the league and play one position. I want to play everything. So that's fun.
What's going to be the biggest adjustment for you coming from college to the NFL, you think?
Probably just picking up on the smaller thing, just increasing my football IQ even more. And I feel like once I do that, who knows where the limits are.
Now he's 6'4", he's 296. I believe was listed over 300 at Ole Miss. I think given his production, if he, does really well at his pro day with the testing, I think that 296 is a good enough number. He's a 3-tech, like not under any illusions. Like he's saying he can play defensive end if you want. Well, okay, then 6'3", 296 is more than big enough to do that. Could he be a base end? 32 and a half inch arms, probably not. But could he do some base down defensive ends and then rush the passer as an interior player? I don't think it's out of the question. I don't, but there are these other questions with him. Now, Kenneth Grant does not have those same questions. He's going to put on a show whenever he decides to test, and maybe he doesn't. Like, we know, I mean, he over 20 miles an hour on the next gen, 340 pounds at Michigan. He is a freak athlete. And he knows that, but his game is about more than that. He was a really fun player to talk to. Not like overly loquacious, but like Shamar Stewart was really fun to talk to. So was Kenneth Grant.
Best thing, definitely my bull and pull series, bull pull, bull rip, all those things. But, trying to work out more on my power, always starts off with power, then you can do the finesse things. So. Yeah, just be able to move sideline to sideline, a lot of guys, that's what we strive for, just hawking down, making plays. So that's what you want to be line.
Now, I saved this one because I know he's not a defensive tackle, but I do think when you put together the profile here, Jared Ivey is 6'6", 274. This is a player that I was very excited to see work out, and then he didn't. He was the guy to me that just popped off the tape. I think he can rush inside. I think he can be Eric Armsteady for the Packers, a base 4-3 end who rushes as an interior player on third down. The way that he thinks the game, he was such an impressive kid to talk to. Here's what I mean.
Hey, Jared, there a lot of defensive ends in college football don't look like you. You're bigger than most of those guys. What has allowed you to still be successful at your size? This is what defensive ends used to look like in football.
Yeah, it's kind of a dying breed. So I think just having the experience, playing my entire life at defensive end, and then, adding other layers to my game and just evolving as a complete player. I think, like you said, it's kind of a lost art. So I'm trying to keep it alive.
You guys are pretty different players, win in different ways. What do you think separates you?
I think, man, I just have a large arsenal of moves to go to for different sets of hands, different types of offensive linemen, inside, outside, tall, short, punchers, risers, and clampers. And I think just having a deep bag like that and being able to, rush from anywhere and against anyone is kind of, creating an edge for me as a prospect.
What do you look for when you're trying to put together a pass rush plan? Like you're preparing for the week. Okay, I'm going to go against these guys. Like what are you trying to find when you're looking for an edge that you can create?
Yeah, we look for the strength of this guy, his change of direction, how he deals with power versus speed, how he throws his hand, his body posture, a whole bunch of different stuff like that.
So that's just like, he's not an end, he's not a tackle, he's a hybrid. If they draft someone like Derek Harmon in the first, the freaky athlete, and then you get someone like Ivy on day 2, free agent corner, I think you're in really good shape with this team if you can maybe add a receiver. This draft is setting up really nicely for them. There's still plenty of question marks with the class as a whole because we didn't get a lot of the numbers, but remember, the testing confirms what you already believed. It is a confidence boost. This is who we think the player is. The testing confirms it. We are now more confident in our evaluation. We believe the player is this. The testing says, we are now less confident in that evaluation. So that can affect the way that you feel about the evaluation, but the evaluation is still the evaluation. So the board is not going to move much based on a lot of this because the Packers already had a lot of this information anyway. But we're getting it, so we're going to get to talk about it. We're going to bring it to you all through the weekend. There's going to be a ton more. We're going to recap it all. I've got a piece on The Leap today with some of the things that I was hearing, talking about. We'll get into that next week, but I wanted to bring you this good stuff here. So look, I think the Packers are in great position to add to their defensive front in this draft class. I think they will do that, and I'm excited to see who it is. I really am. So we'll be talking about this a lot more as we head toward free agency, come out of the combine, all that stuff. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Hit that subscribe button wherever you listen or watch us, over on our YouTube page maybe, so you can stay Locked On Packers.